there's bad news and there's good news for Shedeur. The bad news is that the owner, I believe, despite what the owner said, Jim Haslam, I believe he drafted Shedeur.
Yeah.
All right. It doesn't make sense for the Browns to draft two quarterbacks that they realize both of them are projects, right? Draft two quarterbacks. Now they got to keep four. All right. So I don't think Stefanski and Andrew Berry, the GM, and I don't think they really like having Shedeur around. I'm not saying they don't like him.
Don't skip a single second of this video. And if this story touches your heart, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments. Where are you watching from? Let's begin. Let me be real with you. What's happening in Cleveland right now isn't just about football. It's about power. It's about who gets to shape the future of a franchise that's been desperate, starving for a quarterback identity for decades. And right in the middle of this storm is Shedeur Sanders. See, when Jimmy Haslam stepped in and made the call to draft Shedeur, that wasn't some casual fifth-round flyer. That wasn't just, oh hey, maybe he'll compete for a backup spot. No, that was an owner planting his flag in the ground. That was Haslam saying, I see something my football guys don't see, and I'm willing to bet on it. And if you've followed this league long enough, you know moves like that always shake the building to its core. Because let's not sugarcoat it, Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry had a plan. They were lining everything up around Dillon Gabriel. They wanted one rookie project to mold, one guy to funnel reps into, one clear developmental path. And then boom, Jimmy Haslam drops Shedeur Sanders on their desk like a bombshell. And suddenly the room is divided. The coaches don't see Shedeur as their guy. They see him as the owner's guy. And in the NFL, when you're the owner's guy, that cuts both ways. We've seen this before. Remember when Jerry Jones pushed the Cowboys staff to take a chance on Dak Prescott? Coaches weren't sold. They thought he was a long-term project. But the owners saw the vision, and look how that played out. On the flip side, we've also seen it rip teams apart when coaches and front offices feel undermined. They start operating with resentment, passive aggression, even sabotage. That's not paranoia. That's NFL history. And here's the part fans need to understand. This isn't just about Shedeur Sanders. This is about respect. Respect for the draft room. Respect for the coaching hierarchy. Respect for who really controls the fate of the Cleveland Browns. Because if the coaches can't buy into the owner's vision, then every rep, every depth chart decision, every game plan is dripping with tension. You can feel it already. They don't want him there. They didn't ask for him. But Haslam is basically saying, tough. He's your future whether you like it or not. Think about the stakes here. Haslam has already lived through the Deshaun Watson disaster. He's watched Flacco pass through like a journeyman ghost. He knows how fragile this franchise's quarterback history is. So when he saw Sanders sitting there in the 5th round, he wasn't just drafting a player. He was drafting hope. He was drafting relevance. He was drafting the chance that Cleveland finally gets it right at the most important position in sports. And that's why this clash matters. Because if Haslam is right, and Shedeur really is the guy, then Cleveland could be staring at the beginning of a new era. But if the coaching staff keeps resisting, keeps treating him like an unwanted project, the Browns could blow it before it even begins. That's the gamble. That's the collision course we're watching unfold. One man's bold vision against an entire staff's resentment. And if you think this story is going to quietly fade away, you don't know the NFL. This tension is only just getting started. Alright, let's strip away the noise for a second. Let's stop arguing about conspiracy theories and coaching politics, and just ask the question every Browns fan wants answered. Where does Shedeur Sanders actually stand right now? Because the truth is, on paper it doesn't look glamorous. Joe Flacco is the starter. Dillon Gabriel is the hand-picked project the coaches wanted to invest in. And then almost out of nowhere, Tyler Huntley gets signed. A move that felt less like roster depth and more like a human shield, making sure Shedeur never gets the clean reps he needs to develop. That's the depth chart. That's the reality. And yes, if you glance at the preseason stats, it's rough. 14 dropbacks, 5 sacks, negative yardage. It looks ugly. The kind of numbers critics love to screenshot and plaster all over Twitter to prove they were right about him all along. But let me ask you something. If he was really just another late-round project quarterback, why is everyone talking about him? Why is every national show debating whether he should get more snaps? Why are reporters pressing Kevin Stefanski in press conferences about the handling of a 5th rounder? That doesn't happen for just anybody. It happens because this isn't a normal rookie. This is Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback who threw for over 4,000 yards in his final college season, a quarterback who racked up 37 touchdowns under the brightest lights Colorado football had seen in years, a quarterback with NFL bloodlines, championship DNA, and a name that already carries weight. You don't just brush that aside and pretend he's some random camp arm. The league knows it. The media knows it. And deep down, I think even the Browns locker room knows it. because here's what guys in that locker room see. They see a young QB taking every snap seriously, staying locked in, not mouthing off in the media, not crumbling under the pressure of his last name. They see a rookie who's handling adversity with maturity beyond his years. And whether the coaches want to admit it or not, players respect that. They talk about it behind the scenes. They feel it in the huddle. So yeah, right now Shedeur is technically QB3, maybe even QB4, depending on how Stefanski decides to spin it. But position on a depth chart in August isn't the same thing as where a player truly stands in the bigger picture. The fact that he's generating more headlines than Gabriel, more fan buzz than Huntley, and more owner interest than maybe anyone else on that roster tells you all you need to know. Shedeur Sanders matters. And here's the part that fires me up. No matter how hard the coaching staff tries to minimize him, the spotlight keeps finding him. And if history tells us anything, when the spotlight finds you this early, it's only a matter of time before opportunity does too. Let's not dance around it. That preseason game against the Rams was ugly, brutal. Shedeur Sanders dropped back 14 times, got sacked 5 times, finished with negative 27 yards passing. On paper it looked like a disaster reel. And the critics? They jumped on it like sharks smelling blood in the water. See? He's not ready. See? He was overrated. This is why he fell to the 5th round. You've heard it all. The national media couldn't wait to pile on. But here's what they're not telling you. Go back and actually watch the tape. Who was blocking for him? A third-string offensive line that couldn't stop a Pop Warner blitz. Who was he throwing to? Guys who probably won't even be on the roster come week 1. And how was he being used? Yanked out before the 2-minute drill. The exact situation where a young quarterback could learn how to handle pressure. That's not development. That's setting him up to fail. And I'm sick of it, because these same analysts love to rewrite history when it's convenient. They'll tear Shedeur down for looking shaky in his first taste of NFL speed, but they conveniently forget that Josh Allen looked completely lost as a rookie. Lamar Jackson couldn't hit a deep ball to save his life his first year. Even Patrick Mahomes, the golden child of quarterback development, didn't take a single meaningful snap his rookie season. You want to talk about readiness? None of those guys looked like MVPs when they stepped on the field for the first time. What made the difference was support, patience, and coaching. And that's where Cleveland is failing right now. Instead of saying, hey, this is a kid with elite talent who needs real reps and real coaching, they're treating him like a nuisance. They're pulling him out of meaningful drives, feeding him to backup linemen, then turning around and pointing at the stat sheet like it proves their point. That's not development. That's sabotage disguised as evaluation. Think about it. What exactly are you proving when you stick your rookie behind a leaky O-line, give him vanilla play calls, then act shocked when he takes sacks? That's not a fair test. That's a trap. And it's a trap critics love because it gives them ammunition. But let me tell you something. You can't define a quarterback off one preseason game in August. Not Shedeur Sanders. Not anybody. Because here's the reality. The great ones almost always look raw before they look refined. Allen, Lamar, even Jalen Hurts was doubted for years before he exploded. Development takes time. And if Cleveland isn't willing to give Shedeur that time, then they're not just failing him, they're failing themselves. So yeah, laugh at the stat line if you want. Call him a bust in August if it makes you feel smart. But when this kid finally gets the support he deserves, when he's standing behind a real offensive line with a game plan designed for him, those same critics will be scrambling to delete their takes. And that's what makes this firestorm so infuriating. Because the problem isn't that Shedeur struggled. The problem is that Cleveland is more interested in proving they were right about him than actually helping him succeed. And if they keep that up, they won't just stunt his growth. They'll be the ones exposed. Here's what I keep coming back to. Shedeur Sanders' story isn't one of doom. It's not the he's done before he starts narrative the critics are pushing. No. This is a story of opportunity, a story of timing, a story that might just flip in an instant. Because for all the noise about depth charts and preseason stats, look at how Shedeur has handled this moment. No excuses, no finger pointing, no complaining about who's blocking for him or what the coaching staff is doing. He's kept his head down, he's put in the work, and he's carried himself like a professional. That's maturity, that's leadership. And in a league where locker rooms can sniff out arrogance in a heartbeat, that stuff matters. And let's not forget the resume that got him here. Over 4,000 yards. 37 touchdowns, carrying Colorado football back into the national spotlight. Every big moment in college, he delivered. Every time the lights got brighter, he rose with them. That's not a coincidence. That's DNA. That's proof of what he can do when given the chance. And here's the kicker. Jimmy Haslam hasn't forgotten that resume. He's the one asking for progress reports. He's the one checking in on Shedeur's development. Owners don't do that for every draft pick. They don't sit in meetings asking, how's the 5th rounder doing? Haslam does it because he knows. He knows at some point this kid is going to get his window. And when he does, it could change everything. Think about Jordan Love. He sat. He learned. He got dragged through doubt and criticism. But the moment Aaron Rodgers left, he was ready. And Green Bay hasn't looked back. Think about Patrick Mahomes. He was called raw. He was not ready. He sat for a year. And then the very first time he touched the field as a starter, it was undeniable. That spark was real. And that's what makes this so fascinating. Because what happens the first time Shedeur Sanders gets real snaps? I'm not talking about garbage time with third-string linemen. I mean meaningful minutes, with the playbook open, with actual starters on the field. What if the spark shows up right then? What if the talent jumps off the screen in a way the critics can't deny? That's why I'm not discouraged. That's why I'm not buying the narrative that this is over before it starts.
Because everything about Shedeur's character, his background, his production, and his patience tells me this. When that door cracks open, he's ready to run through it. And when he does, everything in Cleveland changes. Here's how this all plays out. And you don't have to be a prophet to see it coming. Joe Flacco will start the season. He'll do what he always does at this stage of his career. Manage games, throw a couple of decent balls, maybe keep things steady for a week or two. But eventually the losses pile up. The Browns stall out. Fans start grumbling. The locker room starts questioning. And suddenly the calls for change get louder. That's when Dillon Gabriel will get his shot. The coach's hand-picked guy. He'll step in. He'll run the system. He'll look competent. But here's the thing. He'll never be more than that. Competent, safe, a placeholder. The kind of quarterback who can hold the clipboard for years but will never be the one to put a franchise on his back. And when that becomes clear, when the fans realize this is just another stopgap, the pressure won't just rise, it'll explode. And that's when Shedeur Sanders walks into the picture. That's when the door opens. That's when all of this preseason drama, all of this coaching resistance, all of this media noise gets flipped on its head. Because the very moment he touches the field in a real game, not garbage time, not behind a third-string O-line, that's when we find out if the spark is undeniable. And I believe it will be. This is the moment doubters fear. Because if Shedeur shows even a flash of the poise, the arm talent, the leadership he displayed in college, the narrative changes overnight. No more talk about fifth-round projects. No more talk about being overhyped. Instead, it's the Browns fan base electrified. It's the media forced to admit they missed it. It's the league waking up to the reality that this kid was always more than a storyline. He was always a quarterback worth believing in. And make no mistake, Haslam will push for that moment. Owners don't like watching their investments rot on the bench. Owners don't like looking foolish for going against their staff. And Jimmy Haslam didn't draft Shedeur Sanders to fade quietly into irrelevance. He drafted him to change the trajectory of a franchise that's been stuck in mediocrity for decades. So when Shedeur finally gets his shot, and he will, that's when this story becomes something bigger. That's when fans will look back at this preseason circus and realize it was just noise. They'll remember the critics who tried to bury him before he ever had a chance. They'll remember the coaching staff that resisted instead of embraced. And they'll remember the night it all flipped, when belief turned into proof, when potential turned into reality, when Cleveland finally had a quarterback worth rallying around. Because that's what belief does. It doesn't just silence doubters, it creates legacy.